understand how the vanishing point for all lines of sight is the same place, if I remember that wording correctly.
For all lines of sight above the Earth that are a consistent level above the Earth, yeah.
I don't get it.
Yeah, this is kind of hard to wrap your mind around.
Because,
so think about
let me just tell you where I'm coming from first, so maybe you can explain it better. Okay. A vanishing point, to me, is if you take some parallel lines and extend them off into infinity, it's where those lines appear to point.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's unique to every set of parallel lines. There are an arbitrarily high number of vanishing points.
When you're looking in a particular direction, all of those lines of sight that are going away from you will have the same vanishing point. So imagine like what?
Here's the picture to like what I'm talking about. There are three highlighted vanishing points in that photo.
All right, listen, we're talking about Polaris, right? So let's say Polaris is a consistent level above the Earth, right? It is. It's a fixed position, right? So all we're talking about is moving away from that fixed position. We can imagine that as standing at the equator and watching Polaris move from our zenith down to the zenith over the North Pole. Now, when we draw that slope, it's going to go from our zenith down to the vanishing point. You understand that?
Okay.
All right, so that makes it more specific. We don't have to worry about any other vanishing point but Polaris. Depending on how high Polaris is, that's what determines that slope. Any other any other object that we're going away from us, if there was a hallway going from us to the North Pole, or there was a building that was 100 feet tall going from us to the North Pole, they will all terminate at that same vanishing point.
Yeah, as things get further away, they appear to shrink in size, right? And let's not just focus on Polaris, because that makes it easy to ignore some problems that I see. If we look at the whole of the Little Dipper, no matter where we are, if we can see the whole thing, it's about 17 degrees wide. It doesn't get smaller as you move south.
Well, now it
never moves.
The subject.
Well, that's why I said let's not focus on just one star, because that hides the problems that I'm seeing.
Polaris never moves.
But we are talking about
Polaris. Saying that.
The specific subject we're talking about.
And that's why I'm trying to change the subject just a little bit to focus on the whole of the Little Dipper.
He's throwing
because
you off
focusing on one star hides the problem.
Move.
Yeah, okay. Well, I thought you had some
Tom, this is
Polaris,
very disruptive and incorrect. Please refrain.
Correct in many ways.
But not the others. Not the important ones.
What about the slope, Slacker?
Yeah, I tried that, but he never actually explained how that stays constant.
I don't understand your question, actually.
That's
I'm talking about Polaris.
I had to, but let's go back to the first one. If you're moving away from an object, normally, as you go farther, the rate that it appears to lower in your vision, that rate gets lower. It's not linear, or it's not a constant. Like for every 5 feet, you step back, it lowers less and less. Like a smaller and smaller amount.
What is dependent upon the height of the object. That's why I keep talking about the height of the object.
Why is it different? What is different every 5 feet? Like I don't.
Well, that rate is different, but it's never constant.
It's got to do with how close it is to the acute angle.
Oh, okay.
And also, it's not going to be linear just because you're on a flat surface. You're assuming that just because it's on a flat surface, it would be linear. You're forgetting about the diffraction limit, which is going to eat up parts of the object and make it non-linear. So your assumptions are...
You've got it backwards.
You're saying that a sphere can only account for the compression toward the horizon that we see that's non-linear. A flat surface can do that as well, since the diffraction limit will eat up parts of the ceiling and the floor. You're
need
not
to
listening
explain
to
what
the other
linear means,
alternatives.
Selector?
Assuming it's to be linear, it's not.
I mean, he's not using linear correctly, and that's going to be the basis for a lot of misunderstanding.
Linear basically meaning that you're going to get a constant, rate of some sort, as opposed to
which
something
you
that's
don't
more
have.
like a curve.
You don't have that when you move away from something over a flat surface. The rate that it appears to lower in elevation is not linear.
As it would not be anyway, because of the diffraction limit. You need to change your expectations because they're inaccurate. You're forgetting about the diffraction limit.
When
where
you
the
move
You need to
north or
change your
south,
whole fucking system,
object are cut
Lemon.
off.
God damn.
but when you move
The
north or
diffraction
south,
limit doesn't
the
change
rate
this.
of movement, when you move north or south, the rate that the elevation of the celestial pole moves is linear. It's the same every mile that you move.
This
Yeah,
pushes
there's no
toward the
problem.
horizon, and you can see it toward the south, lingering toward the horizon like you're getting a compressed rate. So we're covered both ways. You're just saying that the only thing that accounts for it is a circle. That's not the case.
That's
Not how it
nonsense.
works.
It's just linear perspective.
You
That's
can
all over a
graph this
flattish
out.
plane.
This is easily graphed out to show the problem on a flat Earth.
No, it's not. You're fucking up your graph.
How?
I've already explained.
All right,
You
where's the
should go
fucker?
off and
Where's
think
the
about
graph?
it because you need to think about it to wrap your head around it. You
Okay,
will
there's
find
the
it if
graph.
you look for it.
Point to the fuck up.
Oh man.
If you're looking down a hallway,
Hey, point
you
point
see
the
something
part-
dip down to
The
the
question was
horizon.
not to you. The question was not addressed to you, Lemon.
There's about a hallway.
He's not answering.
Look up.
Brandon,
Yeah,
No,
I'm thinking
let him
about
think
how
about
to
it.
communicate
Hard
the fuck
problem.
up. Hold on,
Give him
I'll
a
be
second
back.
to think
I'm gonna go
about
look
it.
at the
God
diagram.
damn.
I'll be back. I gotta go look at a diagram so I can figure out how to communicate it.
All right.
If you look down the hallway, this is inaccurate. The flat
You're
hallway
not-
appears to dip down
How?
to
Do
the
you
level
live
of
in a
the eye, so
hallway?
you're expecting the same triangulation in the same
Don't just
position
say
with
it
your
is.
top part of
Explain
your
how and
Polaris
demonstrate.
graph. So
Well,
your
Lemon, you're right.
expectations
This is
are
not
off
what
yet
we see
again.
looking down the hallway.
Your expectations are off yet again. You're expecting to have triangulation at the same elevation when we know stuff at the same elevation in the hallway dips down toward the horizon anyway.
Lemon,
It's
they just don't understand.
Whoa.
They just don't understand this foreshortening effect. That's all it is.
Yes, that's what it is.
The rate that it
Flatsoid,
drops
that is a simple way to put it in.
predictable.
Flatsoid is right. You guys are mixing up Euclidean diagrams with site observations. That's really the core root of
So
the
let-
issue
Fuck
and why
out
you're
of
fucking it
here.
up.
Jesus
So you-
It's
Christ.
true.
You
Brandon,
make a
is
map.
that why-
You make a map, and I'll make a map, and we'll see who we can even get anywhere in this world if you make the map the same way you just talked about.
Yeah, we will eventually. We're almost there. We're almost there. We've got a couple
Years
pieces to
and-
unlock,
and
and then
10
we'll get it. We'll get there.
How much of a map have you
We're
got?
getting there. The thing is, we're dealing with left brain globers that have no imagination and no visual
You
imagination.
haven't
Oh,
10 feet of a
So
map.
think about these things in a consistent way. So a lot of modeling is going to be needed for these left brain globers who have no imagination and no vision.
Yeah. It's
How
the
weak and
communication part that's
pathetic
the difficult
must
part,
you
Lemon.
be
I just
to
don't-
try to argue that way, Lemon?
Communicating something verbally that needs to be modeled visually for a visual
It's modeled
people or
visually right
people with
there
no
on the screen,
imagination
and
is a
you
little
can't
hard.
explain it.
And it's going to be people.
But feel free to go away and draw a graph.
Yeah, but you're mixing the two up. You're saying, okay, look at this side view, Euclidean based, like an engineering drawing almost is what you're saying. You're conflating that with when we go out into the world and we take perspective based site measurements of the angles. You're mixing those two up, and they're not the same.
Would
So
you
are you-
prefer
so
the
you're telling me-
Z-axis
Oh,
view?
wait a minute. Are you telling me that if I cite something that has an apparent elevation of 10 degrees, that's not the same as drawing a side view with a sight line that's 10 degrees?
No.
Yeah, your diagram right here doesn't show what you'll see in the world.
I'm not asking about the diagram. I'm asking if I see something in the distance at an elevation of 10 degrees, can I not diagram that as a side view with a sight line of 10 degrees?
Orthographic is not perspective. Two different things,
That's
dude.
the point.
Well, yes, that is the point.
Because of
Not
the ceiling merging
photographic.
with the floor,
Visual.
you're tempted to make your baseline align with no part of the object, no part of the 2D object within it. You're going to make it align with no 2D part of the object, or for the graphically smushed into that line, and your angle is going to be a little off. It's going to be missing information. So that's why orthographic is not the same as perspective, because the ceiling will merge with the floor, cut off and smush and make the part of the object disappear.
The only problem is we can see it from space.
Orthographic is a
Well, wait a
type
minute,
of
but if
parallel
I-
projection. That's why it doesn't have perspective in it.
If I sight an object with an inclinometer, and the inclinometer says 10 degrees, I can look at the inclinometer from the side and it still says 10 degrees. Same deal.
It will only give you on the part of the object that hasn't been smushed beyond the diffraction limit.
Smush.
So you'll be missing
I'm
key
not
parts of
talking
the
about
object
your-
if it gets too far away.
I'm not talking to you, Lemon.
All right.
See, this is what makes you guys so unintellectual. You guys don't think about this in another way.
Unintellectual. Goddamn. What other way? should we think
Unintellectual,
about it?
yes.
What way?
Well, you should think about the diffraction limit like looking down the hallway where the ceiling merges with the floor and cuts
You're
off
looking
the
straight
object.
up, there
making
is
the
no
angle
floor.
miss critical parts of the object.
All right. That's not good. Get a better one.
All right, well, they're just denying.
You expect perfect side
now.
orthographic view of the object where all parts of the object are preserved and proportional.
I know, you must
when
not have heard me
perspective is
start,
not
Lemon.
proportional.
Is
The
my
part
mic
that's
not
closest to
working?
the floor and
Is that
closest
the
to the
problem?
level
Your
of the
mic is
object
working fine.
will
It's
push
when
and
the
cut off
brain
parts of
aren't
the
working.
object, breaking the proportions
If Lemon started
orthographically.
before me,
That's a
that's my
contradiction.
fault. I didn't hear him, but
He's just talking over you.
it seems to me he just doesn't give a fuck. Lemon does what Lemon wants to do because Chemo does what Chemo wants to do, and everybody gets to do what they want to do if it's approved by Chemo.
Yes.
So until you Globers get the diffraction limit in your flawed perspective reasoning, then you're not going to go anywhere. You're going to forget that the ceiling merges with the floor and cuts off the object.
Show us how. How does the diffraction limit affect us? Go ahead.
The ceiling will merge with the floor, cutting off
What
the object.
ceiling?
No. Actually do it. Actually
Part
do it.
above the level of the eyes.
No. Actually show how this causes Polaris to drop
Modeling? I'm
by
not
1 degree, 69 miles.
For all intents and purposes, you're looking down a hallway where Polaris is at the roof of
No,
What
you just
ceiling?
you're just throwing out numbers.
Diffraction
You
limit.
can't do the math.
Diffraction
You
limit.
can't do shit.
These people have no vision, no imagination. It's like I have to model everything visually for them.
You have nothing but imagination.
Lemon, you're looking at the
Pure,
ceiling.
utter
Shut up.
insanity.
There's a word we use for something that's pure imagination, Lemon, and it's called fantasy.
It's Fantasia.
Yeah, it's fantasy. You live in a fantasy because you have no actual evidence to support your assertion.
Correct.
And when we drill into your
I'm
assertion,
talking about the
they're
vision of
merely-
people like Tesla who
merely-
can build
they're
things
merely-
in their mind,
they are
seeing it
merely-
in their mind's
they are
eye.
merely-
That's what I'm
they are
talking
merely-
about. What are you talking about, Dress?
I don't know. I was trying to finish the sentence. And you know, as I say, then when we drill into it with you and we push you, it comes out as merely your opinion. Every single time. So do you have anything more than an opinion?
Crickets.
I will take your lack of answer as a no. So does that make Lemon the Marjorie Taylor Greene of Flat Earth?
Who the fuck is that?
Yeah. She's Chemo's girlfriend.
Oh, who is she?
She's a US politician with interesting views.
What you mean a crank?
It does crank.
I think that would be an invasion of her HIPAA rights to ask that.
Okay. So she's a retard.
Pretty much.
Ah, must be why she's Chemo's girlfriend.
There's no proof that she's not actually Chemo.
Interesting to hear Lemon try and define what orthographic projection is. That was just his usual bollocks.
Like a side view.
It's a form of
We
parallel
don't see an
projection.
orthographic,
And by
meaning we don't
definition,
preserve all parts of the object in all proportions.
Hello. Ooh. Parallel projection, by definition, can't incorporate things like perspective. That's why we use it in technical drawings, so that it's dimensionally correct. Because if I gave somebody a drawing of, say, a plant room and said, "Oh, by the way, I've used perspective," they're going to laugh, swear, or both, then hit me and throw the drawing back and say, "Give us a proper one."
The main thing to take away from that statement is that vision does not preserve all parts of an object like you would expect with an orthographic drawing, with all parts in all proportions for modeling. The parts of the object that are closer to the level of the eyes and closer to the surface will smush, disappear, and not be preserved. So we do not see an orthographic
exist in the real world
with your baseless optical geometry.
Yeah, but optical geometry that says as an object disappears into the distance, it will reduce in size on all vectors. Not
you have questionable principles, you're going to get questionable results.
Again, Lemon, in the middle of a fucking sentence, can you stop doing this?
I'm not going to sit around for one of your British lectures. It's bland rhetoric that takes us nowhere in the conversation.
It's not going to give an American lecture, is it?
It's not taking us anywhere in the conversation, Dress. I'm sorry. Stick to the freaking point.
He can take as long as he likes.
Lemon can sit here and do a fucking monologue about
bland fucking rhetoric.
Continually talking, and I support the fact that he should get his point out. But if he expects other people to listen to him, he should at least do them the same courtesy.
I'll get Scallop all over you making it personal. You're bored.
You don't care about other people.
No, he doesn't. He's a narcissistic little prick.
You want to remove all variables, Lemon. Go out and lay on the ground.
I don't give a shit about what you guys
go out and lay on the ground, look straight up, and tell me where your walls and ceiling and floor is.
I know you don't care about us.
I'm sure the feeling is mutual. Please keep it professional, business-oriented, and dialectical. I'm not here to make friends, and neither are you. So if you're not talking about the information, please save it.
So again, let's go back to the actual real information. And when we make an observation of objects in the distance, what we find is they're reduced in size in all vectors. And the only thing that we tend to see is refraction, looming objects, or maybe slightly distorting them downwards, which is a very rare thing, generally looming a bit. So that's what we generally see. We don't see a smushing at the horizon. We see objects being reduced to the point where we cannot differentiate them due to the limits of angular resolution. Yet we can always use things like a telescope to bring them back into view. So that's absolutely fine. So that's why we say things go over the horizon, they're not smooshed. Because we have clear angular, we resolve those objects clearly through magnification, and we can see them, and we can see writing on the side of the ship. So your smushing idea does not bear any fact in reality.
Not to mention, Lemon, that if you're going to go with smushing, once you pass 50 degrees, it's not smushing anymore. Suddenly, it's expanding in angular size for some reason that's unexplainable. Not to mention that the distances you have to go to get the declination don't match the prediction anyway. So automatically, you've got a bunch of things fucked up.
You're assuming that your telescope can bring back anything into resolution. Since you're so close to the surface, there's just too much merging with the surface for the telescope to bring back a resolvable image. You're just assuming that the surface has no
anything
effect
about
on your
telescope.
observation, and the ceiling will merge with the surface beyond the telescope's resolving capabilities, as the theodolite's resolving capabilities, the eye's resolving capabilities. So we're going to have to go back to the drawing board and test these principles.
So Lemon, once again, like I said, once you pass 50 degrees, you've got a problem, because after that, the sky is no longer having to smush. Now the sky is expanding, because you've reached the point now to where instead of having to go too short a distance to get the same declination, now you have to go too long a distance to get the same declination. That's a problem, which means that your bullshit explanation doesn't work.
It's not a problem in the hallway where eventually the ceiling merges with the floor beyond 50 degrees. So what are you talking about? The same principle applies for any object that's at a constant elevation over the head, like the ceiling in the hallway is at a constant elevation over the head. For any object, as long as it keeps a similar elevation above you as it goes away, the same principle applies. And eventually the ceiling merges with the floor. So what are you talking about?
What hallway do you live in?
What hallway are you discussing when we're talking about Polaris, Lemon? You said that Polaris would be smushing.
The hallway is basically a way to represent an object that's at the same elevation above the head. Polaris is at the same elevation above the head as it goes away from you as you go away from it. Flat plane. So just like the hallway, which has a ceiling, which is at the same elevation above the head, it will eventually merge with the floor anyway.
Lemon, lay on the ground. Tell me where your hallway is.
It doesn't.
Irrelevant. Irrelevant.
No, Lemon.
Lemon is absolutely
on the
correct.
ceiling.
Now, this is where you're supposed to make an argument to show how your point is irrelevant, because otherwise you just have a pointless question which just hangs in the air. So how is what you're saying irrelevant?
I'm telling you how right now. You can take a light on the ceiling.
So I wasn't talking to you. What are you saying?
You can stand directly underneath that light and then move away and record your angle with your distance. And that rate of change does not match what we see in reality.
How does it not match? You still haven't made an argument, Herb. You need to show how it doesn't match. What's the difference?
The rate of change, you mong.
Is it more? Is it less? What is the main defining feature? You're just saying it's different. How is it different?
If you're using a flat Earth, Lemon, it switches.
Your arguments aren't clear enough for us to make proper conclusions. I have to sit here and extract a conclusion. And then when I extract a conclusion based off of your unclear premise, you chide me for it. Why don't you make a clear point and say how it's different? Is it more? Is it less? Is it more compressed? Is it less compressed?
Oh, he has to work and extract exclusions from things.
I can, but if it's not the conclusion that you want me to make, then you have to make the argument. Because if I come to a different conclusion based off of the same information, and you're not clear with what you want me to get out of it, then it's a poor argument at that point.
Lemon, that's how it works. You extract conclusions from premises, right? Is that hard for you?
I did extract a conclusion and you didn't like it. So make the argument.
Okay, so Lemon,
then why are you complaining you have to do it? Is it too hard for you?
Because you're chiding me for not thinking the same way that you do. When you're not being explicit with what you want me to conclude with your argument. That's the point of an argument. You're saying this is the evidence, this is the conclusion. You don't just say, here, do something with this, because I don't think like you do.
Oh, it looks like you can dish it, but you can't take it. That's all it is.
Concluding from that you're expecting a perfect linear relationship just because it's flat. That expectation is off because things compress towards the horizon due to the diffraction limit and perspective. So we're having totally different conclusions.
You're ruffling the feathers. Okay, just let him simmer down a little bit. Don't rile him up. He's got to get sorted out.
You Globers are spiraling. I'm about to leave. Turn into
differently. He's just thinking differently.
So, Lemon, if you want the explanation, here's one that you can do. When Polaris is 80 degrees above the horizon, if you use a flat plane and do the trigonometry to it, you should only have to go about 529 nautical miles away to make it drop 10 degrees. You've moved shorter. So at that point, you've moved shorter than the distance to get the same drop. There's your smushing. However, if you go 2,500, let's say you go to where it's 40 degrees above the horizon now. Now you have to move past the globe prediction for the amount in order to get the same declination, and your distance doesn't match for it. So now you've moved to expanded amount of sky. Your smushing suddenly became expansion over a certain distance. That's a problem.
The light in the hallway is not going to drop at that rate. It will drop at the rate predicted by trigonometry with two parallel planes.
Correct.
You've heard me say vision is not perfectly trigonometric. So this expectation of distance, you go away to get a 10-degree drop, is going to be shortened because there's more and more compression as you get further and further away from the image, even over a flat hallway. So your perfect geometric considerations
demonstrate that.
So
It's not a
lemon,
matter
going
of
from that
perfection. It's a
though,
matter of completely different behaviors.
yes. And once again, lemon, you missed the point where if you go far enough away, suddenly instead of smushing further and further like you just suggested, it starts to be expansive. There's more space between than there should have been. So that's a problem. You can't say it smushes the further you get away if it also expands the further you get away.
The overarching phenomenon is just the diffraction limit. Refraction, even over a flat surface, could explain that too. With you seeing further and longer than you normally could, we just reverse the explanations. Diffraction limit with a D, making the ceiling and the floor merge eventually. Refraction, making things pop out of the horizon that would normally be smushed.
We're not even talking about things getting close to the horizon.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you now have when you're closer to it, it's smushing faster, and when you're further away from it, it's smushing less fast. You've got to fit. As a matter of fact, it's actually gone the opposite direction and expanded a bit to prevent it from smushing into the horizon. Do you not see the problem with this? Or are you
now
just
you know
going to
how flat you feel with the ad hoc explanations up below. So we can just take these explanations and just flip them on their head for the flatness, with little to no contradiction.
No, it is a contradiction. You can't say that it smushes faster and faster as you go away from it, when at a certain point it starts to reverse. That is a contradiction. That is an inherent contradiction.
I already explained the contradiction with diffraction being the overarching phenomenon of why eventually something in a constant elevation, like something on the roof of a hallway, will eventually merge into the surface, with refraction to make things pop out of this horizon line. It's just a different explanation. It has no contradiction. It explains the same stuff.
No, it is a contradiction limit, because now you're claiming that diffraction moves things up and moves things down out of your line of sight as you need it to.
I said diffraction with a D, refraction with an R. I said it moves stuff up and down. I didn't say that. You were not representing my position properly yet again. I said the overarching phenomenon is diffraction, making things merge into the horizon. If it is above the level of the eyes, it will go down. If it is below the level of the eyes, it will move up. Diffraction with a D, refraction with an R, making stuff pop out of the horizon that would normally be squished. Yet again, diffraction with a D, making stuff approach the horizon line. Refraction with an R, making stuff pop out of the horizon line. So please represent my viewpoint accurately.
Neither one of the observations I just listed are close to the horizon limit. Matter of fact, it's 40 degrees above the horizon. It's not even remotely close to the eye line. So
we can't represent your version of diffraction accurately, Lemon, if it's the wrong version of diffraction. That's where we're at.
Diffraction with a D makes two light sources appear to merge into one. This would cover the horizon phenomenon, where stuff above the level of the eyes appears to go down, stuff below the level of the eyes appears they merge. That's diffraction with a D.
Wait a minute.
Yes, what appears to be a different angle of the light entering the eye by going through media. That would cover something coming out of this horizon zone, appearing to blimp out like a balloon. Refraction with an R would cover that.
Okay, so Lemon, once again, Lemon.
I need to hold on.
Lemon.
I need to ask
Okay,
for clarification though. I just need to ask for clarification. Lemon, are you saying that there's a difference between something called diffraction and diffraction? Are they spelled the same?
Brian, what were you saying?
So,
I'm not even going to
Lemon,
dignify that with a response.
I'm not discussing anything remotely.
All right, we
close to
are
the
going
Lemon.
to be perpetually perplexed by this then if you don't make this distinction,
Sorry,
Lemon.
stupid games, stupid prizes. I'm not answering that. Brian, what were you saying?
Again,
You're absolutely right. This is a stupid game, me trying to convince you of anything.
God damn it, dude. So I'm not discussing anything remotely close to the horizon limit. I'm discussing something 80 degrees above the horizon and the same thing at a different distance 40 degrees above the horizon. Stop acting like refraction is suddenly going to pop it back over the horizon when it's not even remotely close to where I'm talking about. Did the room go quiet or did I get kicked?
Nah, you're
I
here.
don't know, you got kicked.
Nah, the room just went quiet.
And also, towards Brandon, if you're going to say that you vary the distance, especially that it's going to be distance dependent for us to get it on the flat Earth for the Polaris, the further you move the star away, the more fucked up that becomes because now you have to move an order. Let's say you have Polaris at 3,000 for one measurement. Move it an order of magnitude away. Now you have to move an order of magnitude further away to get the same drop drop in angles.
Yeah, no, I understand how it works. I don't quite know how to communicate it yet. I'm actually working on it. There's really no easy way to communicate what I'm trying to say, so that's why I'm being quiet. And it is something I'm actively working on. So, but I do have a reason for believing what I believe.
So you can move it further away, but somehow not change the distances?
Well, it's a little more complex than that. It does work out, though. Like I said, between 85 and 12 degrees.
Have you worked out the constellation problem?
I don't know what the constellation problem is. What is it?
Well, like I was asking earlier, the size of the constellations doesn't change as you go north and south, or east and west for that matter.
Yeah, no, I haven't worked that one out. I have a feeling it has something to do with the total distance they are away not being that different and some atmospheric effects, but no, I haven't worked it out.
Because magnification of some sort has been brought up by several flat earthers, but that just completely doesn't work when you think about it for a minute, because you can't magnify everything that's just near the horizon in every direction. Otherwise, you don't have room to fit everything anymore. If you've got 360 degrees of stuff and you double the width of it, well, where's the other 180 degrees worth of stuff going to go?
Well, I think Lemon is right. We can't see forever. So Lemon has a point. There is something going on with the ground after a certain distance, and I think it's variable. You're missing a certain percentage of the sky, essentially, above the true horizon. You're missing some degrees of it. So I don't know what's going on in those degrees. And then there's a question of, okay, we're on a flat Earth. Does sunlight, does starlight go forever? What is happening with the atmosphere when you're at that angle with a celestial object?
Well,
How do you apply Snell's law to that? There's lots of things going on. So I try to leave the horizon out of it.
Yeah, we can completely ignore the horizon and anything within 10, 15, 20 degrees of it for this conversation. Doesn't make any difference.
Yeah, exactly. There's interesting stuff happening there, but it's just so variable and fucked up, for lack of a better term.
I do want to ask again, because I missed it with Lemon earlier, what your issue was with these side view diagrams. Because like if you look down a straight tube that's elevated at a certain angle, you can draw that in orthographic view from the side by just drawing the tube at that angle. And you can look down it. So why can you not do that for sight lines in general?
That's part of what I'm trying to show, but there's some issue with how there's no vanishing point in those diagrams, and the relationships that you see when you actually go out in the world and take the observations that we're trying to portray. There's something lost in the translation, so that's another part of what I'm trying to work on, is to pinpoint what that is. But
well, the whole point of them is not to look at the same direction that you're looking, it's to look at it from the side, which is basically the same as looking at it from a very great distance.
yeah, but there's different relationships there. There's different things that happen when things go off in the distance from you that aren't represented in when you look at things from the side. The world doesn't look like an engineering drawing, obviously.
Usually because you can't get an easy perspective to look at it from that kind of view.
Yeah, it's impossible. You're looking from a point, your point of view is a point. And there's always going to be a difference. Let's say you have something that's 100 miles long and you're trying to look at it from a distance. Even the distance from the one that's at mile 0 and the one that's at mile 100 is going to be different because of the factors involved. So it's just, that's not going to impact what we're talking about, but the same type of thing. The distance, size relationship, and the way it orients things towards the center of your vision is what I believe isn't represented in those diagrams accurately. But I'm working on how to communicate exactly what that is.
All right.
It's really not an easy subject. It really isn't.
I mean, I think you're just making it hard on yourself, but I think you know what my position is.
No, I'm not making it hard on myself. Yeah, I guess I am making it hard on myself because I'm trying to figure out what the truth is. Yeah.
With the starting premise that the current explanation just cannot possibly be true and cannot even be considered.
No, wrong. With the starting premise from 0, ground 0. That's the starting premise. No assumptions.
Yeah. If you can achieve
Just
that,
just
will
checking.
be amazing.
How would you describe the motion of the sun around the Earth? Just vaguely.
How would you describe it? It makes a circuit around the central point, in and out. I don't know what the altitude changes are, but it sounds like there are some.
Do you think if you make
but circling above?
Yeah, it's above us. Yeah.
So how did you get that from starting from 0? Because see, when people in ancient cultures started from 0, they goes in a circle above and below.
Well, it does look like that. Yeah, I can see how they would think that.
Well, why
so
would
how
you
did you
think
get
anything
to circling
different?
above?
Why would I think of it? Because I'm considering some things, and I have access to some technology that ancient people didn't have. We have powerful, long range cameras and telescopes, and knowledge. So I have
We also have observations
access
of
to
the sun.
information I'm assuming they didn't have.
And from
Well, we
that,
also
you've
have
been able.
information that show.
Well, from that, you've got the sun doesn't go underneath.
Yeah,
You've been able to get a piece of evidence that shows you that that's true.
I can put together a model that will show that it doesn't. Yeah.
But at the same time, you've discarded evidence that would say that the sun doesn't move in one. At the same time, you've discarded evidence that would show that the sun doesn't move in one circuit above the Earth, such as looking at the sun rising south of east in Australia and then setting south of west, which would mean the sun is moving the opposite direction that you would need it to.
I got a picture of that.
I haven't dug into that in detail. Those are interesting apparent contradictions. Then again, they're couched
I got a couple of
within the
pictures of that if
understanding of the
anyone wants to see
heliocentric
it.
model. So I haven't
Can
looked
you
at it.
see how there's just a whole stream of contradictions that you can't account for? And even if you do account for them, what use is it to anyone apart from you?
Well, I think it's useful to know where you're at. I think that's a useful bit of information.
If they work from the same starting point that you did, which is I've got to reject everything else that humanity has produced and just go with no assumptions whatsoever, well, assumptions as you've called them whatsoever. I'm just going to have a starting point of 0. Then that would, for anyone else, that would disclude anything that you produced.
Well, hopefully they don't have to do that because we'll come up with an actual proof. But so maybe at one point we'll have something we can go, look, this is step by step, built on top of each other, no assumptions.
Have that.
Geometric proofs.
But you've skipped steps, and you're glossing over contradictions where they exist.
It seems like a curious double standard that you, the accumulated knowledge of all of humanity must be rejected unless it comes from you, and then it should be considered.
At this point, no, kind of. And that's because there's some fundamental assumptions that the heliocentric model makes that I find no evidence for.
Yeah, you're making plenty of fundamental assumptions.
Oh, okay. Hey, Sheeple, you're right. It is an audacious undertaking. I appreciate the compliment.
I don't know why you try to rile people up like that. See, what was the point of doing that?
What was the point of him posting his comment? I'm just responding to the energy he's throwing at me. So why are you coming at me?
Well, he asked you a question. Your response was to address the offhand comment.
He made a statement. He said, "The audacity you think you have to come up with some new idea for optics and measurement is quite staggering."
He also asked you to explain. Yeah, he also asked you to explain Bob's gyro data and the lunar eclipse shadow, and then he asked if you would debate Ranty about it.
I will. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Don't you find it rather disturbing that you talk about there are things, there are inconsistencies, whatever, but when sort of pressed into it, it's very hard for you to articulate those inconsistencies. And when we compare it against the evidence you have for the position, I assume you're assuming, which is the non-sphericity of Earth and it basically being flat, you have way less evidence.
No, because it's hard to put into words and to pinpoint the points of failure. There's a lot of information that I'm incorporating and trying to boil it down to what are the real fundamental things going on here. So it's like I figured something out, but I haven't written the paper yet. You know what I mean?
Well, it's like those that understand a topic can explain it in simplistic terms. So it sounds to me like you are trying to formulate an opinion on something. I don't think we can say it's an evidential position.
No. I did explain it in simplistic terms.
Okay.
I already did.
Will your paper address the existence of the South Pole?
No.
Why not? Why not? Are you being selective in what data goes into your shape of the Earth construct?
It's not within the scope of what I'm researching.
But when
But it is there.
I'll take a simple observation, which we've been discussing at the moment, because I'm trying to keep it on the sunset thing. So we look at sunset, sunrise, we look at moonset, and I like the moon because it's less hassle to observe it. We don't see it disappearing into a distance. We see it sinking below horizon. Now, according to the model that I hold to, if I gain altitude quickly, I'll be able to see that object again because my distance to that horizon will be extended due to my altitude. So it's all pretty consistent, and and it's demonstrable because we've seen those observations. I posted a video, a few minutes ago. So I feel I have a very strong reason to conclude that the Earth goes below. Sorry, the sun goes below the horizon from our point of perception.
Yeah, you do. It does appear to do that,
and not disappear into the distance. So why are you adopting a position that it disappears in the distance when there is no evidence to support that?
Well, you're assuming there's no evidence, but my model predicts the same exact apparent thing to happen. So
where's the evidence?
No
I really want to see this.
Well, a question.
Yeah, let's see it.
What model?
No.
Can you give us a glimpse into the mechanism?
Let's not distract us with this. So he's saying he's got evidence that shows that the sun or the moon disappears into the distance, even though from all observation that we can take that I've seen, it seems to go below that horizon line. It seems below our eye line. So, present that evidence.
Well, it doesn't disappear in the distance. That's the alternative that you suggested. In my model, it also appears as if it goes behind the ground. Yeah.
So where does it go in your model if it's not orbiting the planet and it's always above us? If that's your position, and I don't want to strawman you, not like a lot of people. If that's not the case, can you explain the mechanism of how the sun moves or the Earth moves or whatever your position is? Can you explain that to me in any way, shape, or form in simplistic terms?
Yeah, it's still making a circuit above the Earth. Same thing as I said earlier. It appears to go behind the horizon when it gets to a certain distance. And that's all it is. It's just an apparent setting of the sun.
But why do you think
the mechanism?
Well, no. But hold on. What reason do you have to draw that conclusion?
Well, the same reason heliocentrism has to draw that conclusion.
What observation and
the apparent location and the actual location of the sun are different, especially near the horizon.
So again, you don't have any direct observation showing it moving away into the distance because the only thing you can perceive, according to you, is it sinking below the horizon. But for some reason, you're asserting that it moves into the distance. Why?
You don't have any direct observation of the sun going behind the Earth. You're just assuming, based on what you see, that that's what it's doing. Same thing I'm doing.
I gave you an example of my reasoning behind it. So you might disagree with my reasoning, but I said, according to our model, if I gain altitude quickly, I should see that sun coming back above the horizon as my horizon is extended backwards.
Same thing. I expect the same thing. I expect when I go up in altitude,
and it's obstructed by the Earth that we see that. And that's held in all laws of perspective and optics, as I understand it, to be a reasonable case. The only reason that a light source would fail to hit us with light is if it's obstructed by something. So, again, that's my reasoning for my position.
That's your assumption that you have wrong.
That's my reasoning. So what's your reasoning?
That assumption that you just said.
Not an assumption.
You said
the
only reason something would appear with the light from something wouldn't hit us is if it's obstructed by something. That's your assumption that is incorrect.
Is that an invalid assumption, Brandon?
It is an invalid assumption. Yeah.
How so?
Can you demonstrate that to be the case?
Do you agree with that statement? That's the only reason that you wouldn't see something is because it's physically obstructed by something?
Let's see, we're getting off the topic here.
He's running.
I want to see
This
his
is very
model.
nearer to the topic because you have this built into your
No,
model.
Brandon. Initially, you've gotten away from the question 3 times already. The question was,
No, I haven't gotten away from anything. You're not
Yes, you
understanding
have.
and following.
Let me go ahead and repeat Dross's initial question on this then. What is your proposed mechanism by which this occurs on the flat Earth?
Same as the heliocentric model, refraction through the atmosphere.
Does that
Can you show us an experiment to
The
confirm that?
heliocentric model says the sun will be obstructed, the light will be obstructed due to the Earth being in the way. That's not your model, is it?
Actually, what you say is that we see the sun on the horizon. It is actually already obstructed. Isn't that your model?
That's nothing to do with what we're talking about. We're talking about the fact of where the apparent position of the sun is when it's obstructed. The heliocentric model, because this is the bit I'm rebutting, you claim that the heliocentric model said the only reason that we see it at sunset is due to refraction. That is not true. Is it?
Answer this yes or no question, and then we
I
can
want you to
move
address
on.
my point because you keep avoiding my point by asking me questions rather than addressing the point that I have and not giving
But
any
you're not
reason for the
acknowledging
position
that
you
in your
hold.
model,
I've given you
you're not
a
acknowledging.
description and a reason.
And you're getting unhinged pretty quickly, but you're not
No, I'm
acknowledging
not
in your
unhinged. I'm
model.
just continuing my point, and I'm not allowing you to talk me off the mic.
You're not acknowledging that in your model, the apparent and actual position of the sun near the horizon are not the same.
What's the reason for sunset in the heliocentric model?
See, you still won't acknowledge it.
No.
That's a key point.
Because we're talking about the reason for a sunset in a heliocentric model, and I am denying your claim that it's purely due to refraction, and I'm saying that's not what the heliocentric model is, and I'm asking you what your understanding of the reason for a sunset in a heliocentric model is.
When we see the sun just touch the horizon in the heliocentric model, it is already obstructed by the Earth, according to
So you're
you.
not going to answer the question then? Cool. Okay.
You're missing my point. You're not understanding
not
the
answering the
implication of
question.
what I'm saying.
You're not
understanding the
question.
implications of what I'm saying.
Brandon, it's a red herring.
You're not answering his question, foolish. Yeah, so Brandon, you're trying to introduce a red herring to get away from the question. You were asked for the proposed mechanism by which the sun sets on the flat Earth. Will you explain that?
I already said it. Refraction
So you're
in
claiming
the atmosphere.
And then I asked him to actually say, because he made a claim about the heliocentric model I disagree with, and I was asked, because he said it was just refraction that causes sunset, and that's not what the heliocentric model says. The sunset's due to the rotation
That's
of
not
the
what I
Earth.
said. That's not what I said.
And it has nothing to do with refraction. He's merely talking about the apparent position of the sun based on its refraction. And in fact, we could even argue the point that it takes 8 minutes for the sunlight to get here anyway. So the sun's not where it is in the sky because it's
Nope, it doesn't.
Data.
No, see, you don't even know your
you
own
know.
model. It doesn't take 8 minutes for the sunlight to hit us.
Yeah,
The sun is already there when we're shining, so that has nothing to do with the difference between the apparent position and the actual position of the sun in the heliocentric model.
If the sunlight we're receiving, let's just say if the sunlight we receive is 8 minutes old, therefore the position of the sun in the sky is not really where it is. It's
Incorrect.
just where that light is coming in, because that light is already 8 minutes old, so the sun will be what? Quarter of a degree.
Incorrect.
Half a degree in error before you even get to refraction.
Do you want me to explain to you why you're
Yes.
incorrect? Is what you're saying is incorrect?
Go for it.
Okay. The sun in the heliocentric model is stationary. its light is always, it's static. It's static.
Not quite. I'll not be pedantic. Go on.
In relation to the Earth, right?
Both of those are incorrect, yes.
That is not incorrect. It's
within
the reference frame of the Earth, the sun is stationary, correct?
It's close to stationary.
Incorrect, but yeah, go
Let's
ahead.
not be pedantic. Let's just grant that. Come on, let's move on. It's not important.
Okay.
No, I mean, if he wants to be this hyper literal pedantic fuck on his points, I'm going to do it right back to him.
I'm not being hyper pedantic.
What? Mean you have to be a cock back.
Let him dig the grave.
All right.
Oh boy. So
yeah.
the sun in our reference frame, the Earth's reference frame, is stationary, meaning the light it puts out is static. The light that it puts out is always in the same places in that reference frame. You understand?
Oh.
So when we are spinning, rotating on your heliocentric Earth, we are merely moving into that static source of light. So the light from the sun's position is always hitting us from exactly where the sun is. As opposed to if the sun were moving around the Earth, there would be that 8-minute delay, and the apparent position and actual position of the sun would always be different. But in your model, it's almost always the same.
The problem I've got with that, and I'm just thinking through, because I'm not going to say you're wrong, because I actually like that explanation. That's probably the best explanation you can give something. That's really cool.
Yeah, I got it from some physicists online. Thank you.
That's all right. I try and be fair.
Yeah.
But what are the problem? And this is what I'm thinking. So, we've got sunlight leaves the sun at T minus 8 minutes, yeah? And it's now heading towards the Earth. During that time, the Earth has rotated by half a degree, or thereabouts, I think. And sunlight, so where the sun started from and where it hits are two different positions.
No,
Hey,
it's
by
just
the
that
way,
the light
8
that's
minutes
coming
is
from
2
the
degrees,
static sun,
Druss.
the light that's coming from the static sun is 8 minutes old, but it is indeed coming from the position where we see it, because we're always being inundated. The light's already there. We're just moving into it. Understand?
Yeah, no. That's why I thought that was a really good explanation, because it's a bit like a jet of water, and I'm kind of walking through that jet of water.
Exactly.
Yeah, which is why I said I like that explanation. I can visualize. And that would be my sort of counterpoint. And don't want to argue that, because I need to go and think about that, because that's an interesting point.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, but this is what happens, you see. When you give me information, good explanation, a reason, what did I do? I didn't go, oh, no. I went, oh, hold on a second. That's a good explanation. That's a good reason. I can visualize it. I can understand you. And rather than say, no, you're wrong, I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to review what you said, because that's the reasonable thing to do.
No, I appreciate that, Foolish. You're right.
Yeah. Do you want to look into it a little deeper, Druss?
Yeah, I'm happy
Because
to.
if you
I'm
do that,
do
you'll
some
fuck
food things, so I'll let you guys chat. I'm going to.
Then why does the sun appear to move in the sky? That's my first question.
Not to mention, it's understood that the sun rotates around a barycenter. Not to mention that
No. It's not that complicated. It's very simple. Just take an hour. Why isn't the sun in the same position an hour from now? We're just breaking it down into a smaller increment, are we not?
Yep. Regardless, though, this goes back to the idea that if he's claiming refraction is the reason by which the sun sets on the flat Earth, then he's got some serious. Yeah, then he's got some serious explaining to do, because if it's above the Earth and it's apparently being moved down in that way, he's got some form of refraction that's moving it greater than 20 degrees for reasons that are unexplainable and that keep it the same angular size in the sky throughout the day.
No, it's not 20 degrees. That would be on an ideal atmosphericless Earth with. There's other things going on at the horizon. That's why I don't like talking about the horizon, because it's very difficult to figure out what's going on at the horizon.
Exactly, though, Brandon. The atmosphere would push it higher in the sky when you introduce that. So
Well,
it wouldn't even be 20 degrees. It would be like 23, 24, 25 degrees above the horizon.
Yeah, I don't think so.
If the sun is 3,000 or so miles high.
Yeah.
Well, you know,
It would be
funny that
26, almost 27 degrees. Because the distance to the subsolar point at sunrise and sunset is about 6,300 miles.
I gotta go on mute for a while. I'm out of power and I gotta do all kinds of shit to flush the toilets and stuff.
Brandon, share your information with Lemon and Chemo because they say they know nothing about the sun.
The only thing I know about the sun is the effects that we can observe from the Earth.
You said a whole lot
when
right
we
there.
say we don't know what it is, we don't know the height, we don't know what it is, we don't know how it works, that kind of thing.
You
But we don't observe the sun staying up above the Earth 24 hours a day, but you say you know that it does.
Know nothing about the sun except for what I needed to do at the moment I need to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah, because I'd sure like to know why in the South Pole.
Well, again, you know, I mean, whilst you can say we don't know it 110% or absolutely whatever silly phrase you want to put around it, I think we've got lots of methods that we use that give us a very good idea of what the sun is, how far away it is, and how big it is.
Like the flat Earth can't reconcile where the path of the sun in Tierra del Fuego in the middle of December. It can't. It cannot reconcile.
Why?
It makes sense because the sun is moving the entirely wrong direction.
But we can track it. We can predict it.
It's the same way if you're in sort of the far east of Brazil, the far south of Africa, and the far west of Australia, all three of those locations can see the same star, Sigma Octantis, at the same time, looking pretty much in the same direction.
Which they can't even look at
Due
the same
south.
direction. Yeah.
Which would be almost back to back for Brazil and Australia.
176 degrees of separation. I checked it.
How many?
176, I think, if I remember rightly.
Yeah, it's damn near.
And so, you know, we have stuff like that, which is really problematic if, you know, the stars are rotating above us and we're not rotating here. You know, and if all of those three things, you know, they're all towards the edge of the flat Earth. So, you know, that is a huge problem for me personally.
Wait, Dross, you mean to tell me that the South Celestial Pole doesn't rise in my east if I'm looking south from South America and set in my west so that it can make it to Africa and Australia?
Well, the way I thought of it, if you have like a plate and then you've got like a dome of stars, like a bowl over the top of it, and then you're sort of like
I'm making
that
fun,
bowl
Dross.
round.
Dross, I'm just making fun because they need it to spiral through the sky.
Well, it just means that the stars at the far south would have to literally go along the horizon to go from one point to the next. We wouldn't see that rotation.
Yeah.
You know, that to me is a huge problem. You know, they want to say that it's like a dome over. It's okay. Well, take fucking stars in a dome, put them on a plate, and see what you see. Put that dome over.
I first tried to explain that to Matthew Horbury, probably in about, I don't know, 2016, using a barbecue grill, like the kettle style with the dome lid and the cooking grid in the barbecue grill. Tried to put them on that way back. I think he got it even then when he was a flat earther. He still got that.
It's been 7 years, and Lemon still doesn't understand it.
None of the platties will address that with anything other than magic mirrors.
And one thing I'd like to say is the South Celestial Pole, when you're in the deep south where you can see it, it doesn't rise or set.
Exactly.
Yeah, it does not rise or set when you're in the south because it's all the stars are rotating around it.
And it doesn't go spiral
the equator south.
We have a 24-month time lapse.
Oh, good. Joby's here. Someone to make fun of. Welcome, Joby.
Hello, Curve, my friend.
Hey, Curve, did I hear you were making barbecue?
Hey, Joby, I hear it's kite flying season in Barbados.
Yeah, is your weather safe, Joby?
Yeah, it's kind of windy.
Just rain and wind, but you're not in any danger or anything like that, right?
It's not raining right now. I'm good.
Nothing but
Well, is there any chance you could go out and ride your bike off a cliff course into the ocean?
Why would you want me to do that? My bike will be
No, we want you to stay safe.
Well, why would I? Let's see.
I'd have to buy a new bike.
Fuck, that was awesome, Kev.
Actually, no. If you live next to the seaside, and especially on an island, you know the most ridiculous way for a native to die is via pedal over the sea.
Hey, to be fair, though, I mean, what's the highest cliff, by the ocean there? What, 10 feet?
Yeah, probably 5 or 10 feet.
Ooh, what a daredevil you would be. Would probably wreck your bike, though, wouldn't it? All the water.
It would. Yeah.
We'll try it. Test the
Especially
IPX
salt
rating
water.
on it.
Yeah, don't take your wheelchair with you though.
It's rated to sustain light rain. Little light rain, little sprinkle.
Just kidding, though. Go off the cliff.
Well, that's got to be good for 30 seconds in the ocean or so, wouldn't it?
No. No, that would die as soon as it hit the water.
Don't be such a pussy. Try it.
I'd rather be a pussy in that situation. It takes like 2 months to get one of those bikes.
All right, so the South Pole doesn't move. Interesting. But it's all the way around.
Well, according to whom?
Anybody who looks.
Yeah, but do we have a 1 year time lapse of the South Pole?
There are time lapses. You need it to move.
Yeah, but those time lapses.
No, you don't need it to
video
move.
cuts.
You need it to be in multiple locations at the same time, an infinite number of locations, because it's not just due south for that one person in Brazil and the one person in Africa and the one person in Perth. It's due for everybody at the same time, all angles. It's got to be in all positions at the same time.
I live there.
So what you're saying is we don't have any evidence, just anecdotes.
You don't even have anecdotes.
Jesus Christ.
Well, all witness statement is anecdotal, isn't it? Isn't it?
Yes.
Thank you.
How's that mini split working out for you?
My room's cool. I have it hooked up to my Google Home, so I can just tell it what to do. I don't have to find the remote anymore.
You're like in the space age.
Yeah.
You know,